Hello and welcome back to Sharks Happen. On today's show we are going to go over a paddleboarder, a wing foiler. We're going to go over a swimmer. We're going over all the recent attacks that happened. We're going to take care of most of them that were happened in December. We're going to finish out the show with somebody that just has the worst luck, because we're going to go back to 1841 and go through their list of shark attacks in this show, which is one. So we're going to cover that guy that got attacked in the year 1841 to finish out the show. I hope you stick around. Okay, now we're going to start out the show over at the Sandals Royal Bahamas Resort, and that is in Nassau, Bahamas. The date, December 4th of 2023. Lauren Erickson Van Wart, she is 44 years old, and her husband are out doing paddleboarding. It sounds like they were right out in front of the resort, but they were less than a mile out, but they don't say much less than a mile out. So they're quite a ways from shore. And she's on her board. There's a lifeguard on the beach, and he hears faint screams, and he looks out and he can see her being pulled under, her and her board being pulled under the water. So he can see that she's being attacked by something. Your board's not going to go underwater like that. He jumps in his boat and gets out to the couple, and he pulls them both from the water. The husband was not touched by the shark. He ends up in the boat along with his wife, but she passes away when she gets to the beach. She doesn't even make it to the hospital. Might have passed away before she even made it to the beach, is more than likely. They said that she had severe bites to her right side, including a massive bad bite to her hip and to her upper arm. So there's no other information on this situation other than she had passed away. You know, the husband isn't about to talk about that thing, and like I said, usually it takes time for this to get out, but we have our distance from shore, we have our time, and what we don't have is the shark, I would imagine. I mean, I'd be surprised if this isn't a tiger shark myself. Pretty nice sized tiger shark. I don't think they have bulls in the Bahamas, and I don't think reef sharks are going to do this. You're not going to end up with your deep oceanic sharks. I don't think they're like your oceanic white tip or mako. So it pretty much would leave like a hammerhead, which I don't think would do anything like this, or a tiger shark. Great whites I don't think hang out there. I think the water's a little too warm there, but I'm not sure on that because it's getting close, I think, to where they break off and they're not seen. So that's the attack on Lauren. An attack and an attempt to predate. Just by what they're saying, I'm thinking the shark probably was out to feed on her. And when the story comes out, I'm expecting to hear some intervention from the husband on the shark. You have a paddle in your hand. They must not have been too far apart. I wouldn't be surprised if he had to stop that shark from doing what it is. So right now we're going to put it down as an attempt to predate, and if we hear otherwise later, we will change that back. But it's definitely a large enough shark to go into the books. We definitely have enough information, so it's going to go in there just like everything else. And on a very unfortunate fatality, one of the last ones of the year. I think they said that there was 9 last year. I'm not even sure how many fatalities there were last year. I go through this for different reasons other than that kind of a stat. So that's the story of Lauren, and we will move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to a waterway known as Headlands, I believe it is, and it's near a town 1770 that is in I believe it's Australia. The date on this attack is December 8th of 2023. A 20-year-old man, he is out doing some swimming. They don't give the distance from shore. It's 4:35 in the afternoon, and he's swimming and he's attacked by a shark, and it's most likely a large shark. He gets help, gets in, and goes to get his ankle fixed up because he was bitten in the ankle. And this is after a rain, so it's probably murky water. It sounds like it's riverish, so it's probably brackish and muddy at after a rain anyway. So really good place for sharks to be able to hang out and ambush food. And it got a hold of his ankle and almost severed his ankle. So he had a very bad bite to his ankle. It seems like it was only a single bite and that was it, and they got him in, and it sounds like they were able to save his ankle. And I haven't seen any updates on it yet, but you know, being that it sounds like it's brackish water and this brownish water, bull shark probably got a hold of his ankles, what I'm thinking. And that would make most sense. Right now we could just put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate on a swimmer, the 20-year-old swimmer. We don't know what kind of shark, and we really don't know what size the shark, but the fact that it could take your heel off, I'm thinking it's a pretty decent size, you know, it's 5-6 foot anyway. So this one we'll hold on to, and we'll see if it fits our category before we put it in there. But that's the story of the unidentified 20-year-old male at 1770. Okay, now we're going to do a little update on Pam Cook, who was out in the water. We covered her maybe in the last 10 shows or so, 10 shows ago, somewhere around there. But Pam Cook ended up, she was with the Beachport Sea Urchins and Slugs, and that's over in Australia, Beachport, Australia. She was the one that was just got down into the water off the ladder and swam away from the jetty, which is basically a dock, swam a little bit away from the dock, and then that juvenile great white came up, and it sounds like first bumped her and then came up and bit her. And I really think it bit her the first time, actually, because I just heard this story again. Bit her in the legs, and then it came back at her, and she put her hands out, and it bit her in the hands too. So she had quite a bit of stitches, but she got back into the water already, and I think that's like maybe less than 2 months. This was a pretty recent attack that we had covered when I was updating some attacks that happened a couple months ago. And she went back into the water with her sea urchins and slugs, but they were wearing the ankle bracelet, and they said it was magnetic, a magnet. I don't even know that it was these powered ones, but the story said it was a magnet, and the magnetic field is very small, only centimeters from the magnet itself. And that makes me think that it's not one of those that creates a magnetic field behind you that's quite a decent size, that I don't think is going to stop a large charging shark anyway. But they're questioning whether, you know, they're effective, first of all, and if that thing only has centimeters, it's not effective at all. Maybe to a little dogfish, not to any big shark. The second thing is, and they brought up a great point that I didn't even think of, they're giving people a false sense of security, that they might swim out further than they would. They might go into deeper water than they would. Then they might go somewhere where they wouldn't, where you know, there's that black looking water when you're in the blue water, like Igor, Yevgeny Trishkin saw the black water over there in Sharm el Sheikh and swam into it, was attacked. Or you see a turtle and you swim towards that thing. If you have that on, what's to keep you from doing things that you might not do if you have it on? So I wanted to give an update on her. We'll see how it goes with her ankle bracelet. They had been swimming there daily. I highly doubt something's going to happen to the sea urchins and slugs again, because of how many times they go out swimming and nothing's ever happened. They just happen to run into a shark that, it was juvenile, it was curious and maybe a little bit mad, and I think it was by that dock, looking for fish under the dock, ran into somebody and just thinks it's more of a threat to their food gathering than it is thinking that the person's a threat to them. So that's the attack update on Pam Cook, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Wedge Island. That is in Australia. The date on this attack is December 24th, Christmas Eve of 2023. Troy Brown, he is 46 years old, and he is out doing some wing foiling. That's a board where you have a board underneath you. You hold on to the sail and the wind pushes you. The wing stays in the water, but the board stays up out of the water. It's kind of like surfing. I don't get it, but he's out wing foiling. This will be, I think, the second one we've covered of wing foilers. So Troy is out doing some wing foiling. It gets 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it doesn't say how far from shore he is when this happens, but he's on there, he's taking a wave, so he's on a wave. He said that the wave turned, and he didn't turn, the wave turned, and it dumped him. And as soon as he went in, he thinks he fell with his foot going right into the shark's mouth. Now, it doesn't sound like he's in deep water, and he might have stepped on the shark's mouth. You never know. The shark probably was down underneath where he fell. But as soon as he fell, first he said he thought that he had hit his foot on the wing, on the foil of the board. And pretty soon he knew that wasn't the case, so the shark just bit and went. He didn't even say anything about shaking or anything, because he thought it was his board. He lifted up and put his foot onto the board and could see the damage to his lower leg and his foot. He ended up getting in, and he had, I believe he wing foiled his way in. He was 2.5 kilometers out. So he had to wing foil his way in, about 1.5 miles, that is, to get in. And I believe he drove himself to the hospital. But he ended up with, I believe it was 17 puncture wounds to the inside of the calf. And then he had 7 more on the outside that included the foot also. And they had to stitch him up with 40 stitches. So, you know, it didn't get all of him. It probably got his wing and the board and some other things. But he ended up getting enough cuts from it. They think that it was he thinks it was a bronze whaler that got a hold of him. Probably not a huge one, but probably over 6 feet. So for right now, we're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. By a shark large enough to put into the stats is all that we know right now. When we go across this later on, if I see that they come up with what size shark from tooth fragments, anything, you know, that they find, these look like straight end teeth, so they might be able to tell that way too. I'm still not sure on if they can possibly do that. But anyway, if they know, we'll update it. That's our story on Troy Brown. Okay, now we're going to head to a spot known as Old Bar, and that is near Taree, and that is in New South Wales, Australia. The date on this attack, December 25th of 2023, Christmas Day. Julian McLennan is 16 years old, and he is out doing some surfing. He says it's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and he said he was sitting in the back, so it sounds like he's sitting up on his board waiting on a wave, and he says he was just rolling over a wave, so it sounds like a wave was going under him and it lifted him up, and just then he felt a clamping on his thigh, and he said it was very severe, and then the shark just pulled on him and pulled him down under the water, and he was released, and he got back up onto his board, and him and his friend paddled on in on their boards, and he was able to go get help. His friend drove him in. Now, I don't know what kind of shark bit him, but I did see the wounds on the leg, and it's odd because they're round, you know, just round ones, but it's not gray nurse because there'd be scratches above and below from those teeth that are in different angles. Okay, now we're going to head over quickly to Ethel Beach, which is on York Peninsula, and that's Australia. The date, December 28th of 2023. Kai Cowley, he is 15 years old. He and his father are out doing some early afternoon surfing. All we know is the time. We don't know the distance from shore, depth of water. We know that he was out in the water at 1:30, and his father was on some rocks at 1:30, because his father's yelling at him to swim to him, and he's trying to swim to him because he's being attacked by a shark. It sounds like this was a lengthy attack on Kai, because the dad was trying to get him to swim to him, and that's just awful. That's just like the pop-off attack that was on film. Same thing. You're listening to the screaming both ways, probably, the dad and the son, and he ends up passing away from his wounds. They don't get into what they are. They do say this is a 13-foot great white shark, and it's definitely not a territorial attack. He's out surfing, and this thing goes ahead, and it sounds like it bit him up pretty good. Like I said, we don't know anything on the details of the attack, but I think that if it was a single bite deal, or even a single bite and shake, they would tell us what happened. A terrible attack on Kai, an attack. Right now I'm putting it down as an attempt to predate by a 13-foot great white shark, and when we get updates, I will go ahead and change the stats on that one. We'll move on. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks. We're going to head over to Paia Bay, and that is over in Hawaii. The date on this attack is December 31st of 2023, New Year's Day. Jason Carter, he is 39 years old, and he is out doing some surfing. It's about 11:15 in the morning. He's out, sounds like waiting on a wave, and there's a couple of others that are near him, because the witnesses said that they were on their boards. There was a shark, and there was one guy in between them and the shark, and that had to be Jason, because they said the shark turned and just started biting on them, and they just took off for shore. One of them said that the shark was as big as a truck, big as a pickup truck, which makes me think pregnant great white myself, a 13, 14-foot pregnant shark. Now, pregnant tiger shark is probably a big monster too, but to say a pickup truck, that makes me think great white. But we'll have to wait and see. Probably a tiger shark. Pregnant or not, we won't be able to tell. But it's just crazy that these people watched. So they said that they watched that shark swim up right next to Jason and then turn and start biting on him. And the shark was, just one person, the victim, away from the other two people. So they got to end up watching the attack start. They made their way in. By the time authorities got there, it was 11:15 when the attack happened, around there. Authorities pulled up on the beach around 20 after, so about 5 minutes later, and they saw that the jet ski was bringing Jason's body in. He had already passed away before he even made it to shore. Again, they don't say what the damage is on this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a lot like the story we just covered with Kai Cowley, where it's just, a feeding event, and then that's not, we all know that's not good when that happens. So for right now, we're going to have to put this down as an attack, an attempt to predate. I'm going to put it down as, we don't know what size shark or what kind. We just know it was as big as a pickup truck, so it will go into our stats. And that'll be the regular show for the day. We'll get to the end of the show, and I have a couple of little shark things that we'll get into beforehand, and we'll finish this off next. Okay, before we get to the end of the show, I want to say how you like my shirt now. It's my three-peat Big Ten champion shirt, which is awesome because, usually that means you beat Ohio State 3 times in a row, and that's pretty sweet. I have my championship shirt coming, and in a few days I'll wear that for an episode. So that's about my Michigan. Now we're going to get into a couple little things. There's a 8 Mile Creek beach, I believe it is, and that is over in Australia, and they just had, I believe it was a couple weeks ago maybe, they had a bunch of marine life just wash ashore on the beach dead. Wobbegong, some snappers, some skates, some rays, things that live like in the reefs. They said that they had a bunch of heavy rains, and their assumption, their guess for what ended up happening with these sharks and the fish and the rays and skates, which are sharks, but their guess is that so much rainwater fell and washed into the ocean that the water got too brackish. It lost too much salinity, is what they're saying, which doesn't make sense to me. I would think that something would get out of the way, go to where that stuff is not right. Also, I would think that would happen quite often if that's exactly what happened. They did say in the story that it's a campground. A lot of campers park around there. And they're the ones, I think, that noticed these dead animals. But I would think that it was more something like that stuff we see, the red fog in the water, that actually is some kind of bacteria, I think it is, that goes ahead and sucks up all the oxygen. And if those fish and stuff get in one of those big red, you're done. You're not going to be able to breathe. You're going to be finished. So that's the kind of thing that I would think that ended up happening then, but you don't hear of that over there. A very odd case. I didn't look through to see if this has happened at that beach in that area in the past. I don't think that if rainwater is going to cause it, it should have caused it in the past. And that I should have heard of this kind of weird thing in the past. I mean, what'd you have? A hurricane we didn't know about? I mean, it was a confusing story. So I went in and saw that. Now there was another thing, drone footage over, I believe this is Australia too. And they are pithing, what they call, I think pithing is the name, sharks. And the drone footage caught them pithing a tiger shark. And what it is, and it's not, there's nothing fun about this at all. And no matter what, when we get into talking of conservation, culls, keeping the numbers managed, it's never going to be fun or pretty in doing so. And I wanted to preface that before we get into talking about what it is. It sounds like over there, most of the ones that they're pithing are caught on their drum lines, which they run along the beaches. Out away from the nets, and the sharks that they're caught, they pit them. And what they do is they take a knife and they stab the shark in the head, and they stab it multiple times, probably 3-4 times. The shark's brain is long and thin, and like I said, you know, the great whites kind of branches out and things. Well, they want to make sure that they kill the shark fast. They're not, you know, it is mean, it is painful, but it is probably, without shooting a shark in the head, the most, I guess, humane way to deal with it. I was thinking about it, is there a good way to do any of that? I mean, I don't know that they could take one of those cattle guns and do them in that way. I don't know. So something's got to be done, because either you're gonna, and you know, these sharks that they're killing like that, I think they had 122 sharks they caught on this one drum line that was a couple miles long all of last year. 122 sharks, about 39 other animals were caught just in these nets and on the drum lines. And it sounds like that they pit those sharks, and they're doing, it's not all sharks, they're doing black tips, great whites, tigers. I don't know if I saw bulls or not, but there was another shark in there that surprised me that they were doing that with. Black tip shark surprised me, and another one surprised me. So it's not just the main three that they're doing, but you know, if we're going to do some conservation and save the you know, you can't let the sharks run wild. I mean, they ran wild back in the day before we were around, but they were already kind of numbered down by like megalodon and other species that would eat them before they even took over the oceans. And you know, back then they used to have all kinds of different things that they could eat that they don't have now. A lot larger shark whales, larger type whales, and a lot more of them. So you know, if you're going to do the conservation, if you're doing it to try to stop attacks, it's not going to work. That's the whole thing. It says you're not going to take out that shark that's going to be swimming along that coast. You don't know which one's going to go there next. It's like trying to, you know, decide what wild mice or wild ants are going to, well, can't say ants because they're all going to do the same thing. It's pretty predictable. Just watch the ants in front of them like you watch the weather from the west, so you know what's coming. Speaking of that, thanks a lot, Iowa. We'll get into that in a minute, but those are the two things I wanted to talk about with the sharks, the pithing and the sharks that washed up dead on the beach over there. We're going to get into this attack, and it's the sole attack for 1841. A gentleman named Andrew Goggins, and what was the name of the, it was 1841, Cockatoo Island over there? Is it Cockatoo? Yeah, Cockatoo Island it sounds like. And this gentleman has the distinct I guess, fame as being the only person attacked by a shark that year. When I go back to the 1800s, there's a few years that only have one person, but most are multiple attacks. This was just one attack. I decided to look into it. Well, he was in the water, and he was 12 yards from shore. Doesn't say the depth of the water. Shark comes up and bites him, grabs him by the leg, and tears away. Sounds like the thigh gone. And he yells to his friend who's over near the bank, comes over into the water and gets him and starts bringing him in. But before he can get his friend in, the shark returned, grabbing him again and pulling both of them under. So he's trying to get him in, and he gets pulled under with the victim. Shark releases, he gets his buddy up and out of the water. By the time they got him to the beach, to the bank, he had passed away from his wounds. He passed away from the bite. They said that all of his arteries were severed in that one bite that removed his thigh. And 1841, it's hard to believe they would have been able to save him, even if they got him onto the shore, knew how to do a tourniquet and got him in. They still didn't have, I don't think, the wherewithal to even deal with infection to be able to save somebody. I would think that with the older shark attacks, that most of them would be fatal when you're in the 1800s, and not because all of them would be, death-threatening with the wound or the removal of flesh, but the germs that the shark carries that gets in there and causes infection, that's going to be what kills a lot of people, especially before penicillin. So, who knows how early they got into dealing with these shark attack wounds, but I don't think that it is till the 1950s that they got even near as good as they are now with it. So back in the day, you were just going to be done. That's why some of these stats of who we have back then, we're going to weight this down heavily towards fatalities, because a lot more people are passing away back then just from the medical community not being able to deal with it. So that's the attack on Andrew Goggins. He ends up bitten twice. It sounds just like Charles Broder, or Stanley Fisher, that went after Lester Stilwell over in Mattawan back in 1916. Pretty interesting attack to have it come and grab the victim and pull them both underwater. I can't think of one where I've had two people pulled underwater by a shark, especially on the second run at him when he's being helped in. Usually you're being helped in, the shark leaves you alone. So that'll be the end of that. That's the end of the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back in another couple days. I got another couple smaller episodes that'll come out. I'll probably put them on the same day, and then I get back into the normal shows, and we'll get this rolling again this month. Until then, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.